So I have arrived at Triberg waterfall or Triberger Wasserfälle here in southern Germany, and this goes against probably everything what regular landscape photographers like. Very touristy area, middle of the day, you have to pay to get in, and there are walks that you have to stay well within. But I will focus this video on how to do landscape photography if you're on family vacation, family holiday, and simply just give you some inspiration for this, because this place here is a very child-friendly area. Triberg waterfall is one of the largest waterfalls in Germany, 7 cascades long, and it's like 163 meters from top to bottom, which, as I said, makes this one of the largest waterfalls in Germany. So I found a few different compositions that I can zoom into right here on this waterfall. So I'm using my 28-200 and just zooming in and capturing whatever small compositions that I can find in this larger waterfall. One of the things is that when you do this, you do have to have a little bit of patience, because I am standing right now on some kind of boardwalk and there's a lot of like micro vibrations. What you can do to combat that is doing something that I usually recommend not doing, but turning on image stabilization in camera. And if I get a shutter speed of around half a second, it's enough to get those streaks in the waterfall, like beautiful aesthetically looking streaks. And then at the same time also get sharp photos, because it's so important that the vegetation that you are looking at here and here just around the waterfall has some sharpness to it, and it's not all blurry. The water can be blurry, doesn't matter, because it's part of the effect. But the vegetation, the rocks and so forth, you want those to be sharp. So even though you use a tripod, try and put on image stabilization and hit around half a second of a shutter speed. On top of that, I'm also taking continuously 3 or 5 photos. So if one of the photos doesn't work, then just try another. And then of course try to coordinate so that you actually take the photos when there's not a lot of kids and or grown-ups for that matter walking around making a lot of vibrations for your tripod.
A couple of nice intimate first photos, relatively simple edits where I just cleaned them up a bit, balanced the lighting in the scene, added contrast, sharpened and created a bit of an autumn effect on the water. One thing I forgot to mention on location was that I used the Tamron 28-200mm. I have several videos on this lens on my channel, but point being, in the context of family-friendly photography, as the lens is a super zoom lens, you can work fast and not having to waste time on changing lenses too much. Besides one photo, which I'll point out in a moment, all photos in this video were taken with that lens.
So I've come over to another platform and just got a little bit different perspective, where I'm trying to capture more of the entire waterfall. What I'm doing right now is I put on my 6-stop filter along with my polarizing filter, which I also had on over there. And I'm taking 2 photos. So I'm taking one with a very fast shutter speed where I pumped up the ISO, and I'm taking one with the 6-stop ND filter on, where I'm slowing down the shutter speed to 1 to 2 seconds so I get the streaks. And then I expect to combine those 2 photos in post-processing, simply just overlay them.
And overlay them I did. I think it's quite a cool effect when you blend a long exposure and a fast shutter speed photo, as you kinda get the best of both worlds. I actually show how I edit this photo and the next 2 in my brand new 19 videos and 6 hours photography course on photographing waterfalls. I am super proud of this big course, as waterfalls are one of my favorite subjects in landscape photography. In this course, I share my vision for the different waterfalls. I dive into composing many different kinds of waterfalls, what kind of settings you can use to get the different effects in the field, and in 6 different case studies, I go out into the field and take photos. And I, of course, also show authentically how I edit the different photos with all the different up-to-date techniques I use to get these epic results. You can get this entire 6 hours course for the ridiculously low price of $99 via the link down in the description of the video.
It is quite a pretty waterfall, and because it's so big, there's just so many compositions. So obviously, if it's family friendly, as a photographer, I guess you will need to prioritize which one compositions to take. So I've come up to the next cascades here, and they're super beautiful. Now right now I'm struggling a little bit with some foam down here. I kind of wanted to include the foreground here, but the problem with the foam is that it actually doesn't really look particularly good. So I am compositionally cutting the waterfall just down here at the water, and then I'm including all the way up, including the bridge right here. I'm trying to coordinate it in a way so that there's not people walking on the bridge. Technically I could have a person there for scale, but I think it still looks pretty good like this. I'm doing exactly the same as before, polarizing filter on, and then I take the ND filter 6 stop on and off depending on how fast of a shutter speed I want. As you can also see, I put on my 16 to 35mm. I wanted to shoot a little bit wider than what my 28mm could handle. So 16 to 35, and that gives me a shutter speed with the ND filter on 4 seconds, f8, ISO 100, and then I get those beautiful long streaks. Then I take the ND filter off, push up the ISO to around 1600, and that gives me a fast shutter speed of like 1/400th or 1/500th of a second. And then I will see back home whether I want to combine those two photos in Photoshop.
I also blended this together with a fast and slow shutter speed photo, along with adding some sharpening, a bit of autumn effect to the waterfall, cleaning the foam I mentioned, and dodging and burning off the foliage. The good thing about editing is that it is something you can do when you have time for yourself. Although editing a photo like this with the blending can seem a bit complex, it doesn't take me more than a few minutes to get it done and apply the different effects that I like. What can take a bit of time is experimenting with and figuring out what you actually want to do with the photo.
So a shower just came by, loads of rain and a bit of thunder also in the air. If I was with kids, maybe I would have to abandon and head back to the car. Luckily, I'm here with Sophia and her parents, so they have just headed back down, and we'll go to a cafeteria and get some coffee while I'll just finish up here. Because there are just a few cascades left that I want to check out before ending this trip. It is easy to complain about rain and mood when you're a landscape photographer, but obviously, especially for waterfall photography, you do need something to feed the waterfalls. Without rain, usually no waterfall. And I would also suggest to get out here on a day where it's cloudy, so you don't get so much dappled light. And it's also easier to control the shutter speed and the exposures when it's overcast. If you want to learn how to shoot in moody weather, how to benefit from those conditions, be sure to get my ebook about light and landscape photography. There's a link to it down in the description of the video. Like my 2 other ebooks on composition, this one is super easy to read. This one also have extended EXIF data where you can see not just the shutter speed, the aperture and the ISO, but you can also see whether I used ND filters, polarizing filters, whether I focus stacked, whether I exposure bracketed or time blended the photos. There's a link to it and the 2 ebooks on composition down in the description of the video.
One thing I often hear from you guys is that you do not have the time to do landscape photography or have much less time because of family obligations. That's of course completely normal. You should never compromise on that, and every situation and family is different. But if you are in a situation with less time, maybe photographing a waterfall like this could be a solution. I saw many families and kids on this day, so I'm sure kids would love exploring a place like this.
So up we go, and there's just so many nice waterfalls right here. I quite like this one. I'm trying with a little bit of a faster shutter speed for the long exposed streaks right here. So I'm shooting at like 1/5 of a second, and it makes the streaks a little bit more like, you get a little bit more texture there. And then I of course also take a fast shutter speed photo for this one. What I quite like is that we're just after the rain and there was a little bit of sun actually coming out, giving a little bit of like mist and atmosphere to this waterfall right here. That's quite nice. There are a few other cascades right here, but compositionally I'm just focusing on this area right in there. I'm going for a vertical composition mainly, and then I will try a horizontal composition also, just to get a little bit of everything, you know.
This last shot was a bit tricky blending together because of the branches overlaying with the waterfall, but it is also one of the photos I show how I edit in my brand new waterfall course. I'm super happy about how it turned out, and I'm sure you can learn a ton. There's a link to it down in the description of the video, along with my ebooks on composition and light. I hope you enjoyed this video and saw what you can get from a seemingly touristy waterfall location in Germany. See you next time.